Hi everybody, Joe and Zach, your local Pittsburgh realtors, here today to talk about inspection issues. We're probably going to do a different whole video on inspections and that whole process. But we wanted to tell you a little bit about once you've had your inspection, you get the report back. You may have had the actual inspection, you may have had a termite check, you may have had a radon test, you may have had a sewer line camera test, all those things. And then you take all that information and you gather it together and you say, okay, there's a couple of options. One could be, hey, we don't see anything on here of any great concern. We're going to accept the house as is. It's not unusual for that to happen. It does happen.
Especially now.
Yeah.
In this market.
Yeah, especially when the sellers are kind of in control of the process to a certain degree. And there's also a couple other possibilities. One would be that you would terminate and say, look, there's too many problems with this house. I'm not willing to get into this level of work. We're going to terminate, get our money back, and move on. But the most likely thing to happen in most cases is going to be you're going to have a few things. They could vary from somewhat minor to somewhat major. And if the buyer and seller can work out something between them to take care of those issues, the sale can move forward. So typically what you see is either a repair being done by the seller to correct the issue. You could see a credit given to the buyer, and they would take care of the repair after they close. And then you might also see a price change. And each of those things, that typically the price change and the credit each have their own kind of advantage. So for a credit, if you were going to be the buyer and get a credit of, say, $2,000 and the repair was $2,000, the advantage of that is that's $2,000 less you'd have to bring to closing as part of your down payment, your closing costs. So it allows you to keep that money in your pocket to actually have the money to do the repair. Price reduction can be attractive from the standpoint of it lowers the costs of some of the closing costs are based on a percentage of the sale price. If you don't need cash, or if you're putting a bigger down payment down, a reduction may be more attractive to you. You can also do a combination. You can say, hey, I'd like you to repair these two things, but give me a credit for these two other things. And it's really just up to the seller and the buyer to negotiate that with the help of their agents, obviously. And, it can also depend on, hey, the seller's moved out of town already. They're not really able to do repairs. They'd rather give a credit. Mm-hmm. It's just easier for everybody involved. My experience has been, and Zach can, weigh in on this as well. Most of the time, even when there's a fairly large problem with the inspection, you can get it worked out to everybody's satisfaction. Whether that, I've had some pretty large price reductions and credits issued. There is a limit on how much of a credit you can get, which also sometimes means that you might get a portion of it as a credit and a portion of it as a price reduction or a portion as a repair. Depending on the type of loan you can get, and that's a little bit of a deep subject to get into in this particular video. It's going to be specific on the price and the down payment, things like that.
The biggest thing with repairs versus credits is some buyers prefer to have the work done themselves or by someone they know. If the seller does the work, they can do it. If you have a good agent, they will put in the CTA is what it's called, a change in terms agreement, and that would be basically where the buyer says, hey, we want this work fixed, repaired, whatever it is, by a licensed contractor, plumber, whatever it may be. Just that helps you avoid the seller taking a cheap route and fixing it themselves or having a brother-in-law fix it, or kind of just slap it together to get the sale done. So taking a credit and a little bit more work on the buyer's part, but some buyers are I'd rather do it myself kind of people. Not that there's any distrust there, but some people just prefer to have it done on their own time and they're in their own way.
Yeah, everybody has different standards on, you may feel like, hey, this needs done and it's going to be $5,000, and the seller may say, yeah, that's your personal preference, but it could be done for $3,000. So you settle on a credit of somewhere in the middle so that both parties are kind of satisfied. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's not as common, but it does happen on occasion, is sometimes a contractor is just not available to do the work in the time frame that happens before the closing. And what they'll do in that case is have a contractor set it up, say, here's when we're going to start, here's what's the price is going to be of the roof repair or whatever the case may be. We're going to escrow that money at closing with the idea that it's specifically going to be paid towards that contractor. He's going to get paid when the work is done, submit his bill to the closing company, and get paid. I've also seen it where sometimes the closing company will hold money at closing, and let's say the plumber came and put a new sewer line in, and they'll say, we're going to pay the plumber at closing. The work will be done before closing, but it'll come out of the proceeds of the sale. So like I said, a lot of times, even if it is a high dollar expense, you have some tools at your advantage to work around those for both buyer and seller to make sure that the house is satisfactory to everybody, the work gets done, and that you can proceed to closing.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.